Okay, we should be going.
All right, we'll call the meeting to order. First is the committee meeting. We'll go over the proposed 25-26 board meeting schedule, which is in your packet, and it has the tentative dates for Tuesdays or Wednesday meetings. Second Tuesday or Thursday, or fourth Tuesday, second Wednesday, fourth Wednesday. Is there any comments, questions? We have to obviously pick one. The only thing, I really thought about was obviously like the day before Thanksgiving, but I'm assuming if we have something, we can move it.
Correct.
Just like we do it for Christmas or anything else.
Yeah, I just left the dates for the Wednesday comparable days, just left them and said if needed, because those are if needed meetings anyway, and figuring we could discuss an alternate date at that time when we approach that time.
More than having.
And I know we took some feedback from the board members that were in attendance, but we heard from Sheena, and I don't know if we really have, we're going to ask our admin team, so.
I am fine if the majority is wanting to switch to like Wednesday, Tuesday, it doesn't matter to me.
And we didn't have any lengthy discussion regarding it, but it's completely inconsequential if it's Wednesday night or Tuesday night.
Yeah, I mean, like, as we were talked about at the last meeting, that obviously there's no athletic events. Typically on Wednesdays, the church side of things, obviously none of us would be impacted by that, and I don't know that it's an impact to you guys or anything like that, but.
I know that we do stream it out and available,
Right.
meetings available. Okay, all that.
Yeah, they can go back and watch it.
Would the student liaison have any impact having a meeting on a Wednesday?
Probably more availability.
Yeah, it's more available.
I would think so. You're talking to senior, potential junior. I would think Wednesdays would probably be better.
I think a lot of kids at that point are confirmed by then, usually, right? So the other, and we're gonna vote on this today, right?
That was the plan later on, I believe, yep.
Any other feedback? I mean, I know, this year probably won't impact me a whole lot. Next year, with my youngest being a senior playing basketball, Wednesday nights are their games. We may have to miss a meeting or two, but I'm not driving 4.5 hours on a Wednesday, but if they have any up here close by, maybe Wednesday we'll see.
Right?
Yes.
Step in.
Yes, indeed.
And he's nervous about that.
Experience.
All right.
Matt, we just started a discussion about the board meeting schedule, Tuesdays versus Wednesdays. Just kind of getting started on that. I know you were here last time, we talked about it a little bit. Do you have any other thoughts or comments on it?
No, I just probably end up, missing a few. There's not very many work trips that I do that I have to be on Wednesday, so it's probably just 2 or 3. I can't get it right now.
Yep, and we talked about maybe it'd be better for students, student liaison, and, even other parents and stuff want maybe attend. But then the other side of the coin is, if there is church kind of things, we do have it recorded on YouTube.
Yep.
Nowadays too, so they go out and watch it. So.
I know this Wednesdays has been brought up historically, and I was the hitch in that video, so I no longer have a conflict or concern with Wednesdays in my personal life.
Is there any like CISA events or things like that would ever take place on Wednesdays that would interfere? Are they typically later in the evening?
I can't think of anything. Isn't the WSB regional meeting, is it on a Wednesday? It's kind of grab bag day though, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't think you can say it's always on a Tuesday. You see some things the same way. Sometimes feel like sometimes they're on Monday, Wednesday, Tuesday.
Yeah.
It doesn't really impact us too much. It has to be obviously on the second or the 4th week too, so I don't know how we plan or go on that because it could change.
If you do choose Wednesdays, we'll be sure to get the word out via social media and probably a communication with families just to say, hey, this change was made.
And that would begin July.
Yep. Instead of the 8th, it'd be the 9th.
All right, any other discussion? Hearing none, we'll move on to the proposed in-school employment for transition age special education students.
So you had a pretty comprehensive attachment there provided by Shelley, who is in the audience here this evening as well, to answer any questions you might have. But generally what we're talking about is, if you're familiar with Project Search, it's a work-based experience provided through the school district to certain special education students to gain skills for the workforce, as well as to work on their transition plans that's part of their IEP, their special education programming. And this proposal does call for them to be paid at minimum wage. And looking at starting with the food service area and buildings and grounds or cleaning, that kind of thing, would be the two spots that, that we think we could fairly easily fill. So with that, I would turn it over to Shelley to add anything else, as well as any questions from board members.
Yeah, so we're just looking at 1 or 2 students to start the first year, and then kind of at the end of that, just reassess and see, you know, how it went. Is there things that we need to change? Would there be additional students? So if we had 1 student that worked the 2 hours every day for the school year, it'd be approximately $2,300 to $2,500 to pay that student for the entire school year. Our closest Project Search location right now is River Falls. I did reach out to the state to see if we could become a Project Search site, which then would bring in additional funds in from other schools who may bring their students for that. But this school year, past school year, and going into next, they're not doing that. They may look to reopen that into the following year after that. So they asked me to reach out to them again at that time. So a way of kind of bridging that gap, and I talked to Craig about it, was to kind of look at doing this in-house.
I know it said in the information we were provided that they would be supervised by DVR potentially, the paraprofessionals and the teachers. Do we have staffing for that? Is there any concern about that?
No, we would have, the individuals, the students that we're looking at, we would already have staffing to cover those. A couple of those students are already fully enrolled with DVR, so we can look at working with them as well. So that's a great question.
Can you elaborate on that? I'm not quite up to speed as Brian might be on it. So DVR is?
DVR is a county program to the vocational rehab center. So
Okay.
students with disabilities can apply for their services as well as adults. And they provide job coaches. They also provide them the opportunity to go out and do job shadowing experiences at different employers that have those things set up. We did have a group of students that did that portion of the service this year already. But as long as they're fully enrolled in the program, they can help with providing some of those services. Does that answer your question? Okay.
Thanks.
What differences would we see within the program versus, like, if we were a Project Search site versus doing it independent? Like, what would be the advantage to us to?
The only difference that it would be the availability of opening it up to the community, surrounding schools within the communities.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's the
so what
only
ends up
difference.
happening is districts would buy seats.
Mhm.
And the Project Search approach, we operated one in Barron, and when I was there, we utilized Rice Lake, so we were buying seats from Rice Lake, and in Rapids, we had our own as well, and we sold seats to a couple of neighboring school districts. When you're a host site too, the rub becomes the cost if you're unable to pull students from other districts in. And a lot of the time, there's a standalone special education staff member that's an employee of the district that would kind of run the program and then work with DVR and coaches and so forth come in and assist. And most of the time as well, there's a collaboration with a local employer. So for example, in Rice Lake, it is, oh boy, now it's escaping me. Do you remember?
Yeah, it was one of the factories that was
Yeah.
there.
And in Rapids, it was the hospital.
Yeah.
the local hospital. So I mentioned in the board update too, it's going to be significantly cheaper for us to kind of do this in-home, in-house, homegrown sort of approach versus working with Project Search. I think I'm not, downplaying Project Search. It's awesome. And it would probably be a bit more comprehensive, and there's more activities that Project Search students engage in as far as team building, and they do some field trips, and they get multiple work experiences, so they'll spend like, I think it's
6 to 8 weeks on location.
yes, and they do 3 rotations. And so it is a bit more comprehensive than what we're going to provide. But on the same hand, it's less than, it's whatever. It's the cost of educating the student plus a little bit of the hourly wage that we're going to pay. That's really the new expense as a result of this. And if you're with Project Search, you're paying on the order of $10,000 to $15,000 per year per kid for those services and that programming.
You mentioned that there's a couple of kids you have kind of lined up to pilot this year. Do you have a plan yet for how future students might be chosen?
That'll be part of what was on the end of it when we look through the evaluation. So I think under the next steps, yeah. So as we work through it, learning what the different jobs that they're doing. A part of that too is looking at scheduling, when the students can schedule. Some of the students that are in the 18 to 21 program that remain through that, this would be a fit for them too, and then scheduling isn't as much of a concern. So every year it'll look different for each, whatever the students are.
With the internal program, can you still partner with community businesses if they had something like this available where the students could go to their place of business?
Yep, so we started that this year in a pilot program as well through DVR. So we had 5 students that did that. They did an experience at Dove, and then they also went to Bosch in Balsam Lake and did a couple of on-site. I think they did 3 weeks at each of the places working. And Dove is actually going to recruit one of our students that was there this past spring and help her get through this summer to get her CNA license. So it's been a really good journey for the kids.
Part of the thought process too is that we're also an employer, so why not, model what we would hope other area businesses might do. I think our rub too will be our limited student population, so it's not as though we've got 10 or 15 kids per year that we're looking for work experience for. It's probably more on the order of 1 to 5 maybe at the most, but yeah, absolutely. So the slant is really the idea around incorporating the district as one of the quote-unquote participating employers and making it meaningful in that result too.
Any other questions? All right, hearing none, we'll move on to the policy 363.2 rule, acceptable use.
Okay, so I'm going to talk about items C through H all together, so that we don't need to keep, I don't need to keep interrupting, but the 363.2 rule, acceptable technology use policy, is new, and that's what we're looking for approval, and that will appear next month. The reason behind this being brought forward in this time frame is the fact that we wanted to and had intentions of incorporating AI, artificial intelligence language, in our acceptable use policy, which we have accomplished by developing this rule. In addition, in July, you're going to see student handbooks, and we want to ensure that the student handbooks align with updated policies. So, barring any significant concerns or issues that we find this evening, there'll be approvals coming forward for these policies as well as student handbook that reflect portions of these policies at a future meeting. So that's why the timing is as it is. The rule was developed by Brian Cray and reviewed by myself and Mike Wilson, and has incorporated multiple aspects of not only AI, but also aspects of the other exhibits that you see listed there that we are bringing forward for deletion. Those are exhibits A through D, as well as deletion of policy 363.25, one-to-one tech program acceptable use. Because the deletions are as a result of the generation of the rule, because what's contained in those, in essence, is placed in the rule, or they're being recommended for deletion because they're no longer standard operating procedure, they're outdated. So for example, you don't need a standalone policy with respect to email use, right? And you really don't need a one-to-one technology program policy when those aspects are incorporated into your acceptable use as well as the rule. So that's generally what the approach was, and I'm happy to entertain any questions you might have.
Is there, this may not, well, probably fit in here, but the AI, is there any concerns about, should they be using ChatGPT versus Copilot versus Gemini? Are we kind of limiting which ones they can use?
Yeah, there's conversations that have been ongoing among the administrative team and Brian Gray with respect to what open resources the district would support or allow. And so I'm not going to pretend that I know what the list is, but there's been some student resource and staff resource lists that are being generated that will be shared. Of course, because it's internet-based, we have pretty broad authority to select or block certain sites that we don't think are educationally relevant or appropriate. The primary slant with kids has to do with academic integrity and plagiarism, right? And the primary slant with staff members has to do with confidential pupil data and ensuring that you're not compromising that. So really, an acceptable use would mean, look, just like when Google came on the scene in 2000 or 2001 or 1999, whatever that was, and everybody was like, oh my God, what are we going to do? We should ban everything. That's not really a reasonable approach. And so it will be a work in progress, but yes, to be direct, it's not just open access to anything under the sun. There'll be vetted resources that Brian and the admin team will go through that staff members and students have access to on the district network.
Yeah, and that wouldn't be incorporated into here. This is more about students. That would just be stuff that's going in the back end, right?
Correct, and those would be based on internal conversations. And just like, I'm sure most board members are aware, and if Brian was here, he could speak to this eloquently as well, and that is, you're always playing whack-a-mole. So you have the firewalls or whatever set up, and the kids figure out a way to get around it so that they can play games. Most of the time, it's not anything that's of any super significance, but you have to problem solve with regular frequency. And I can guarantee you, by the time we adopt a policy and set something like, these are the AI resources we're going to use, a month later, they're going to be totally different, and we're going to want to use different ones and not use the ones we said, or the ones we said aren't even available, you know what I'm saying. So the last thing we do is articulate a list of things and have that be part of policy. It's just more, like you said, on the back end and working through what arises on a regular basis.
Does this cover it all, like you said, plagiarism and stuff, where, a kid just goes, write me a paper, and dumb it down a little bit where it's believable that a 12-year-old would write this? Is that partly in here?
Yes, so that is the main, this is a student policy, the 300s are student-based policies, and that's the main slant is with respect to academic integrity and plagiarism. Yeah. Now, there are programs that claim that they can detect AI-generated content versus, human-generated content, and I'm not 100% certain on the accuracy of those things, but there are, like, I think no red ink or turn it in or something like that. There's a couple of different options that are out there. So.
And typically, I would imagine the staff will know if all of a sudden this kid comes in with little Johnny comes in with an eloquent paper that's gotten C's on all the previous ones. Just like if they were copying and pasting on an encyclopedia or something.
Yeah.
But it does make it
It's a little harder to detect,
Right.
is what it comes down to.
I have a question, because I was reading through it where it's gonna be very subjective to like what the teacher allows in the classroom. So is, like, what if you have a teacher that's all for AI tools, and then you have teachers that are like absolutely not, even though it could be a great tool for their classroom, but it's more, their opinion or what have you. Is there gonna be like an exception to policy for the student to bring forward if the student is in disagreement with the teacher, and kind of showcase that, hey, in this specific class, even though you're against use of this, I'd like to advocate to use this because that type of process. I just assume that that's gonna happen.
Yeah, so to that, Tashina, what I would give you for an answer, it goes back to the 2001, 2002 school year when I started working here. And we sent an attaché of middle school representatives to the Stillwater School District where they passed a referendum to launch one-to-one. Okay? And we were at a junior high, I believe, middle or junior high, I don't remember. And one of the primary questions that I had at the time was, so where in your teacher evaluation, to the principal of the building, where in your teacher evaluation is incorporating technology into instruction as a requirement? Yeah, we don't have it in there. Oh, you don't? No. Okay, so what would you say is your uptake of staff members using technology in their classroom because the taxpayers just approved hundreds of thousands of dollars to give every kid in this school building a laptop, and what about staff members that don't use those machines, was the question. And he said, well, you know what, it kind of works itself out over time. Right now, we're probably at about 80% uptake, 80% use, and I said, well, what about when you implement it? I don't know, probably 50, he said. And so what has made that change over that time? And he said, well, frankly, it's the staff members learning from other staff members and building their confidence and so forth as one. But the primary motivator is kids saying, hey, why couldn't we do this on the computer? So that's a long-winded answer to say, I do think these things over time rectify themselves. Although we still have probably some staff members in our school district that have their materials on Microsoft Works and are completely beside themselves that they never got transitioned over to Google Drive, you know what I'm saying? I'm teasing, but at this time that was a big deal too when Microsoft Suite was no longer going to be supported and it's got to be Google Docs, and people lost their minds. And the same thing happened when Works went away and it had to be Word instead of Works. And so what I would point to is that this is just another, a similar development in terms of what it means to classroom use, and will there be 100% uptake in people using it unilaterally? No. What are we looking for? I think here we're talking about dipping our toes in, starting to figure out where it's applicable, how we can use it from a professional perspective, in an educationally relevant perspective, and there's probably going to be some staff members that are like, yeah, I don't see a need to do it, and I'm not going to. But that's not going to be something that we're going to, on the front end, take a hardline stance on, much like we wouldn't computer use when we just issued kids laptops or Chromebooks in whatever, 2004, or whatever year that happened, you know what I'm saying? So kind of a similar approach, nothing staunch or militant about it, but working people down a continuum of learning about it.
Anything else? All right, we'll move on. Oh, yep. We got covered through H, right?
You got it.
All right, I'll call the meeting to order. It's the regularly scheduled board meeting. Start with the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call vote. Thanks, Kelly.
Matt Bryce.
Here.
Tashina Rager.
Here.
Don Milky.
Here.
Ronnie Schuler.
Here.
Brett McCurdy.
Here. All right, Don, will you read the mission statement and the rules?
The mission of the School District of St. Croix Falls is to provide a supportive, student-centered learning environment that cultivates cultivates character, fosters academic excellence, and embraces diversity. Board meeting rules. Focus on the mission, vision statements of the district. Come prepared. Be respectful of others and open and accepting of ideas. Actively participate. Avoid side conversations. And remember, board meetings are open forum.
All right, thank you. We'll start with principal's comments. We'll start with you, Mr. Wilson.
Sounds good. A few things, finishing up the year, obviously, graduation I thought went very well. We had one, I guess I'd call it a little bit of a surprise. In January, we approved the GED option for getting our high school diploma. And we had a girl, one of our seniors, who had turned 18 in the fall and was very credit deficient and really didn't have plans, didn't have hope to finish up. And this GED option, she worked hard throughout the winter months and she received her diploma because of that. So it was a great move, that pulling that in. And we've got a couple of kids that are currently in the process. And obviously summer doesn't work well for continuing that, but we'll have a couple of kids in the fall who will get their diplomas as well because of that. So, you know, but kudos to moving forward with that process in January, making sure we could have that for our kids. So that was really cool. Working on, last week and now this week, working on finalizing our next year's schedule with some small tweaks and adjustments to the Bell schedule. We're still kicking a couple different things, ideas around about passing times and things, but working with the middle school schedule. And you know, we have a lot of shared staff and a lot of shared building and space. So that'll be finalized very soon. It looks like it's coming together nicely. Currently got summer school going on in the high school as well. We have two different flavors in the high school, one being government. We offer that as a virtual program throughout the month of June, and we've got 29 juniors and seniors taking government class right now. And to my surprise, every year we have at least that many wanting to do summer classes. And these are, you know, really good kids who just want to take more classes and they want to do one over the summer. So good for them. And we've got 18 kids currently. They started yesterday doing credit remediation, so 18 kids who have failed a class somewhere along the way, and they're coming in. They're required to come in from 8 to noon every day, and when they complete that class, they'll be able to be done. But that started yesterday, and we'll go through that 3 weeks in June, same schedule as the rest of the summer school programming. So even though it is summer, the building is busy. And related to that, I checked with Ms. Rose today just to get our numbers, and on any given day, we've got between 120 and 140 kids through the weight room
That's
on
amazing.
a daily basis. And as you can see, they're cleaning out all the time. So, like I said, obviously summer it's a little more low key, but we've got a lot of big kids in the building on a daily basis.
All the spring sports are done?
Yes. Yep. So. Spring sports ended. Our girls track team, I would say, had some great success. The rest of the teams did fine, may have won a game or two, but yeah, the girls track had some stellar performances and upped themselves as the season finished up, so that was cool.
Yep. All right, Ms. Platt.
We have summer school, some has caught up in drawing butterfly. We have summer school going on too, and it's going great. Fun. The teachers moved rooms, the 4K and K, got a whole bunch of athletic kids to help them move boxes and got it done in a half a day. It was marvelous, and their rooms are looking good, and that's really all I have right now.
All right. Mr. Imhoff, your last one for us.
Yeah. School year ended well. We recognized 74 eighth graders moving on to the high school. Had wonderful weather for our last day activities, and the teachers worked hard those last 2 in-services. We have some classroom location changes this summer, nothing like her. We moved rooms so we can more effectively implement a special education model of co-teaching with regular education teachers, so we moved some rooms so they'll be right next to where our current special education rooms are. Summer school's going great. We have anywhere between 140 and 150 students attending 11 different classes, taking everything from tourists for the week, bowling, hunter and boater safety, to Boost Up, and that's a program for our students who struggled academically during the school year. And then finally, I'm preparing a bunch of various items for Mr. Wallace so he has an easier transition.
All right, thank you. Any questions? I have one for you, Mike. The government, is that an AP class?
No, it's the regular government class. Yeah, so it's a requirement, in state of Wisconsin requirement throughout the years. We have felt a little bit of a pinch offering enough sections due to our staffing level at high school. It just gets to be a pinch, so a handful of years ago, I don't even know how many, 10, I don't know, a while back, we started offering that as a summer school section to kind of alleviate that pinch a little bit. And like I said, most kids think summer, let me go, and we have a batch of kids every year who say, summer, I'd like to do government.
But there would be a benefit to some of our seniors that have release,
Yes,
right?
right.
So that's a wise move on their behalf. So for example, they have a work study that they're doing, or they have release, it might be a study hall period rather than a government period during the school year.
Yep, strategy, there's definitely strategy there from several different layers. Some kids
Works out.
wanting to lighten their load for take this off of their plate senior year so they can do two AP classes or something like that. So there's definitely a strategy there.
Yeah.
All right, Mr. Brown.
Yeah, I was going to give you a quick update with respect to the budget, and that is we still do not have one. You will get a 25, 26 proposed budget from us. Our hope would be that you see something in August. I would be shocked if there's going to be something ready for July. I just read today that representatives from the legislature as well as the governor were in talks, budget talks, but those have now come to an impasse. And so they have parted ways, and the budget then is going back to the Joint Finance Committee for their work. And then, of course, there's going to be a lot of bouncing around between the JFC, the governor's office, and the legislature when it's up for final vote and approval. And I would not be shocked if August comes and we may not even have a budget then. So let's hold our breath and see what happens. But rest assured, once we have an ability to put reasonable numbers together, we will do that. The problem is that it's the biennial budget, and we have no idea. Like, there's no human that can tell you what the next budget looks like at this stage. So we'll get that out to you as soon as we can. Around a similar time frame, you will see how we stacked up for the 24-25 school year as we start to roll things down here in the month of June and dot the i's and cross the t's and get all the accounts rectified. So sometime in July or August, there'll be an update with respect to how we ended this school year too. So there you go.
All right, thank you. Board members, has anybody had a chance to hit any training?
Don and I went to CISA. It wasn't a training specifically, but to make sure that our region was represented, and Brooke Hauser from Osceola opted to continue to represent this area.
Good luck out again.
There's a gentleman from Clear Lake that really would like to as well, so I think that there's an open, one of those general seats is open next year, so we'll come back next year. Wait for that, because I've heard that one's been tough.
All right, thanks for going. None in the public here, no awards, so we'll move on to the consent agenda. Take a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll make that motion.
A motion by Matt,
I'll second.
second by Don. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Moving on to curriculum and policy, we have the policy 442.1, the school board liaison, which we've talked about. To make that happen this next school year. For a motion.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
On that? So I saw, I think it's the last bullet point of like the description. So for this student school board liaison, where it says that that person, or there's an alternate, so I guess two people will be responsible communicating any happenings back to the student body. Like, what communication vehicles are they gonna be using? I was just curious about that. Is there some mentoring going on for the students as well on how to communicate out any major things that happen?
unsure. It's a really good question as we revive this.
Yeah, I was just, I was like, oh, that's a good opportunity for them to like take kind of like that communication role
Yeah.
too,
So I have talked with Suzanne Imhoff, who heads up our student council, about having some connection for obvious reasons with the liaison. That liaison does not have to be on the student council, but they'll have some conversations going back and forth in both directions for that purpose.
Okay,
You know, the vehicle and how and when, don't know.
okay.
I think what, as time progresses, there'll be items that that the board may want to know, well, so what's the student sentiment around this? And the student liaison could, you know, in coordination with Mike or the counselor, generate a student survey that could be shared. I would think that putting something in the morning announcements or the daily bulletin kind of thing would be a wise thing. But for example, if it's a board meeting like tonight, maybe the AI policy and it's just lunchroom conversation, kind of a, you know what I'm saying? So I think it'll kind of organically develop as the year progresses, and between Mike and I and the student, we can figure out, and the board, of course, we can figure out what that role looks like, because having it be meaningful for the student and ensuring that there is communication with the broader student body, I think is the whole point. But I think it's rational also to say that there's probably some things that we're going to talk about that are really not super consequential to kids, you know, immediately. So ferreting that out and figuring out what kind of venue we need or what kind of interface we need will be something that we work on throughout the year.
That was it.
All right. We have some kids picked out yet?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, they went through the application process.
All right, well, we'll take a motion.
You need a motion to approve the student school board liaison.
The school, the
Policy.
policy. Yeah.
Policy number 442.1.
Yes.
I will make that motion.
All right, we have a motion by Don,
I'll second it.
second by Tashina. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries. We'll move on to the 25-26 board meeting schedule, which we talked about earlier. We would just need somebody to make a motion either on Tuesday or Wednesday.
I'll go ahead and make that motion for moving to Wednesday. Majority. Kind of like that Wednesday.
Yep.
Yeah. And then that would be effective starting the month of July?
Correct. Except as noted
Yep.
on the attached, because there's a couple on Mondays and so forth.
Great. So I'm making that motion to move to Wednesday.
And I'll second that motion.
All right, does this include, do we want to talk about time? Does the time 5:15 still work? Is that, did we have to do that at a different?
No, you could, if you're going to modify the time, this would be a great time to do it, to be honest with you, yeah.
I would be in favor of keeping 5:15 only because I can't make it here by 5, so I'll be doing.
Well, it could go the other way, to move 5:30.
5:15 sounds good.
Okay,
We're home 15 minutes
if
early.
everyone's comfortable with that.
All right, so the motion is to basically move the meetings from Tuesday to Wednesday, same time, 5:15. Second and fourth, as presented. We have a motion by Katrina.
Yep, I made the motion.
We have a second.
By Ron.
By Ron, okay, sorry. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion
Is
carries.
that gonna be on the shared board calendar? Will that be updated now?
Yes, I will have to go into my calendar and make those modifications, and I'll share it with you folks.
Thank you.
As not Wilson, though. He made the mistake of declining an admin team invite, and I'm not sure what the setting on his Google machine was, but you could not reverse it.
It
I swear to
changed
God.
the rotation of the earth.
Yes,
That's amazing.
the magnetic poles of the earth switched at the time. And
Stumped
like
Mr.
Brian, even Brian Craig, who we all know is a savant, could not fix it. We had to reissue all of the invites, so that's what we're laughing about. So don't decline.
I never accept them, I just like
Yeah. Yeah, I'll make those modifications, and we'll do, we'll ensure that we get the word out to the community as best we can.
So July 9th is the first.
I believe that is accurate, yes.
Yep. June 24th at this point, you mentioned that it probably won't be needed, but,
I don't think it's necessary, no.
all right, so the next meeting would be July 10th, or 9th, whatever that,
July
9.
that's the Wednesday?
Yep.
Okay, July 9th. Thank you. All right, Don, you want to discuss the rules of the meeting?
No.
Wait,
Yield
yield
price
prices.
service.
Oh, geez, thank you for
Yeah.
keeping me back on. All right, we got it, thank you.
So this got brought back because of the question on childcare prices, and those are now reflected on the sheet, but one of the things that Amy Dowsher mentioned to me, which is, I think, a legitimate point, and that is that that's a catering price. So the way we do food service is not, it's not really a price, there's no problem that you're approving it, that's gonna be the price for childcare, but that's their catering cost that's developed as a result of the size of the meal and the portions and all of these things that they're working through. So technically, the board would not need to approve that as it's developed by the food service department, so that's why it wasn't there in the first place, according to Amy, which makes all kinds of sense to me. And part of my confusion was the fact that I'm new and I haven't been involved in a district that operates childcare. And so now we know moving forward, if you want to see what those prices are, I think completely reasonable. Of course, anybody can know what that information is, especially board members. But it wouldn't technically need to be approved by the board. Nonetheless, they're there for you, and we do need the increase approved so that we can communicate that as well.
This is just a silly typo, but apparently high school, middle school, and elementary school kids pay $50 for milk.
So it's not .50?
.50.
Yeah,
So,
my apologies.
with, yes, with.
The adults
Really
get a break.
delicious milk.
I didn't notice it. Yeah.
Oh yeah, there's no point.
And just to
Yes,
clarify, again, because it's a catering cost, but the meals for our 1- and 2-year-olds for breakfast are higher than our high school breakfast. That's all right.
Can I just check on that for you, since it doesn't matter for
Yeah,
the
then we
approval
can
too?
go.
I'll just get you, everyone a clean copy of the daycare prices, just so you're aware.
That's just for Lawrence purposes, and then we'll approve the high school, middle, elementary, adult, and reduced prices.
You gonna make that motion?
I just did.
All right, we have a motion by Ronnie with the correction to the 50 cents, right?
Yeah. I'll second.
Second by Don, any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. No, we don't need to do a roll call on this. Okay, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. All right, now we can go to, if there's no announcements, the upcoming events. The next board meetings would be Wednesday, July 9th. We discussed the rules of the meeting. Thanks for correcting me. I'll take a motion to adjourn.
We did discuss the rules.
Well, we didn't get to that point.
No, so I'll discuss them now.
Thank you.
We focused on the mission, vision statements and the vision statements of the district. We came prepared, we were respectful of others and open to accepting of ideas. We actively participated, we did not have side conversations, and we had open discussion.
All right, thank you. Now I will take a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion to adjourn the meeting.
Motion by Tashina,
I'll second.
second by Don. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.